So I just finished a fantastic week visiting Jordan. It's a country that's rich in history, culture, and natural beauty. From exploring the ancient city of Petra, to scuba diving in the Red Sea, to floating in the Dead Sea, there's plenty to see and do. In this video, I'll walk you through the itinerary and logistics we did to fill a week in this fascinating and welcoming place. To some, Jordan sounds a lot more exotic and dangerous than it actually is. Although it's still a developing nation with some aspects of traditional culture, much of it is very modern, and to a traveler, it can be a wonderful introduction to the region and to Arab culture. So I'd suggest taking some of the regional travel advisories with a grain of salt. We visited in June 2024, and there was certainly an active conflict happening just across the border, but we didn't see a single sign of it during our week in Jordan. In fact, I saw far more outward signs of protest and unrest due to the Gaza conflict the previous week while I'd been in Toronto, Canada, than I did during my 8 days in Jordan. However, since many tourists tend to unfairly lump Jordan into the Middle East unrest, we had far fewer crowds than expected. As always, situations do change, so please do your research to make the most of your time. We purchased the Jordan Pass a few days before our arrival, and I have a separate short video on that you might consider watching if you're planning a trip. Once our flight landed in Amman, we picked up the rental car and drove to our Airbnb at the Dead Sea Resort area, which was about an hour away. Driving a rental car in Jordan is easy, especially while outside the major cities of the north. A few warnings though. You'll encounter some animals occasionally on rural roads. There's an unexpected number of potholes for a place that rarely has freezing temperatures. Often there's no painted lines to divide lanes on highways, or they're so faded you can't see them. And finally, a common way to enforce lower speed limits in towns is they place numerous speed bumps, which are often unpainted and can be very poorly marked. After a quick float in the Dead Sea and an overnight in the region, we made our way to the village of Wadi Rum, which is where one of Jordan and the planet's most amazing places is located. And that, of course, is the ruins of Petra. Now, I visited Petra as a solo traveler way back in 2002, and no surprise that a lot has been built since then. There's plenty of new roads, new hotels, a new visitor center, a high-tech museum, and enhanced visitor facilities are all welcome additions. Petra is the ancient city of the Nabateans, and it's carved into the red cliffs of the area. Although the treasury is the most well-known site in the city, there's hundreds of other temples, tombs, structures, and caves to explore. Entry is through the new visitor center, then a walk down the 1 kilometer road to get to the entrance to the Sea, which is a large fissure in the 80-meter tall cliffs that wind 1.2 kilometers to end at the treasury. The Sea itself is a magnificent path winding between the towering cliffs. And I'll say, the anticipation that builds as you walk down it is crazy. Each corner you expect to have the treasury revealed until it finally peeks into view, and it's breathtaking. It seemed that many visitors didn't go a whole lot further than this, and some just turned around here. Well, the treasury had by far the largest crowds of any other place in the entire historic site. But it isn't even 1% of the city. From there, the canyon winds down the so-called Street of Facades until it opens up into a large valley surrounded by tombs, cave houses, an ancient amphitheater capable of seating over 4,000 people, and the remains of a number of large temples. The whole site is actually in far better condition than you would expect from a city that, except for small groups of Bedouin herders, has been abandoned for most of the last 1,500 years. So if you haven't done any homework before arriving, and you know little of the history of the region, you'd be well served to hire an official guide. But since I had visited before, and I'm a former history teacher, we just went by ourselves and had an amazing time. Cell reception is good, and major sites and trails are well marked, so it's difficult to get lost. And there's plenty of Bedouin vendors selling trinkets and refreshments all over the site. Since we arrived in Wadi Rum in the early afternoon, spent 2 nights, and didn't depart until noon the 3rd day, we were able to spread out our visit a bit and go into Petra 3 times, twice for 3 hours and once for 6. But you can see almost everything in the ancient city with one very long 10+ hour day. Although I'm in reasonably decent shape, given the intense daytime heat when we visited in late June, I don't see how that long of a walk would even be physically possible that time of year. So let's just go through what we visited. Our first afternoon, we walked down the Sea, went to the treasury, and walked amongst some of the high caves and the royal tombs. We attempted to do the Aqaba trail to see the high overlook over the treasury, but it was closed. So we turned around and headed back to the hotel. Total walking was around 10 kilometers. The next day was our only full day, so we got up early, and we were one of the first through the gates when they opened at 6:30 a.m. We arrived at the treasury, and there were less than 5 people there. It was magical. We took a few photos and then headed through the valley, past the closed vendors and shops, to the trail to access the monastery. We were the only ones on the trail, and although much of it was still in the shade, I'm really glad we went early, because even then, before 8 a.m., it was a very hot, sweaty climb up thousands of stairs. But when we arrived at the monastery, other than a couple Bedouin shopkeepers, we were the only people there. Magic again. We had it all to ourselves for over 30 minutes until a few hiking groups who had gone on the backdoor trail arrived. Soon after, we headed down, got a cold drink at the Nabatean restaurant, then decided to try the Aqaba trail to the High Treasury overlook again. But it was still closed. If they would just put a closed sign at the valley floor. Anyway, the total hiking for that day was about 16 kilometers. On our third and final day, we again got up early and were some of the first through the gates into the park. Of course, we had to stop and snap a few more photos at the empty treasury before we continued to hike to the high place of sacrifice, which is an altar of ceremonial importance. Although the altar is interesting, the panoramic views of the entire valley below are what really makes this hike worthwhile. We looked around a bit, then returned back the way we came with a total walk of around 9 kilometers. Then we checked out of our wonderful hotel and headed to Aqaba. So here's just a few of my recommendations for Petra. There is no need to hire a horse to take you from the entrance gate to the start of the Sea. It's less than a kilometer. But the persistent horse guys will tell you it's free. However, a generous tip is expected. And if you're in relatively good health, there's no need to hire a golf cart to take you from the visitor center to the treasury for 15 Jordanian dinars one way or 25 Jordanian dinars return per person. This is extortionately expensive. Only do this if you're mobility impaired and would not be able to walk the 4 kilometers each way otherwise. And it's entirely downhill going there, so if you think you might need cart transport, just get it one way on the way back. Although the Sea is paved, all the rest of the trails are dirt, sand, and rock. Please wear sturdy hiking shoes or boots. I saw some absolutely ridiculous footwear choices on a few visitors, ranging from flip-flops to Crocs to even heels. So next, dress sensibly. It was a high of 34 degrees centigrade or 93 degrees Fahrenheit with not a cloud in the sky all 3 days we were there. I saw people stupidly dressed in dark colors, tight jeans, designer party wear, no hats, no backpack, and carrying no water. I don't know how they didn't melt. If you're comfortable wearing shorts, wear them. Dress in light but modest and loose clothing, get a wide brim hat or headscarf, and bring sunglasses. If you're going past the treasury and it's summer, bring at least a liter of water per person. And if you're going to the monastery, double that. Too much is better than not enough. If you didn't bring a backpack or are in a pinch, vendors do sell overpriced water in the park. Now, some taxi drivers outside the visitor center will pitch you a trip to the back entrance to Little Petra that'll get you to the monastery before the crowds. Doing this will cost you 15 to 20 dinars and will save you a few steps, but no time, since that entrance opens 30 minutes later than the main gate, and it's the same length of hike with just a little bit less in elevation change. So if you're a fit hiker and have a limited budget, just get up early, skip the back entrance, go through the main gate, and charge. You'll get to the monastery at least 20 to 30 minutes before anyone else and have few to no vendors pitching to you on the way up or down. In Wadi Musa, we stayed at the Petra Moon Hotel. It's just outside the park gate. It was super comfortable, clean, and well managed. The staff were extremely friendly and helpful, and I thought it offered an excellent value for the money. We paid 62 Jordanian dinars per night for an ensuite room with 2 beds, and a bonus was the hotel had an amazing sparkling rooftop swimming pool, which was incredibly refreshing after a dusty and sweaty hike. So the next part of our trip took us here, about a 2-hour drive south to the Red Sea port of Aqaba. Our main objective here was to take advantage of the beautiful and affordable Red Sea scuba diving. About 15 minutes south of Aqaba is a marine reserve that has a number of dive shops and both natural and artificial reefs made out of ships, even a few tanks, helicopters, and airplanes. There's a number of dive resorts in the area, but we chose to stay here at Arab Divers, which is a 5-star PADI dive resort. Although the accommodations are simple, the quality of instruction was great, the AC was cold, the pool was amazing, the prices were super affordable. I highly recommend it. If you're thinking of getting your initial or advanced certification, this is one of the easiest and most affordable places in the world to get your skills checked out. Aqaba itself is worth a visit as well. It has a number of great restaurants, an ancient fort, and it's really easy for visitors to navigate. So after a few magnificent days of diving, we made our way north again to visit Wadi Rum. Now this place is a stunning desert landscape, famous for its dramatic sandstone mountains and vast open spaces. If you want a preview of Wadi Rum in its full cinematic panorama, you can see it in Lawrence of Arabia, Rogue One, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, or most recently, Dune 1 and Dune 2. We booked with the Bedouin Lifestyle Camp and did a half-day group tour with an overnight in their camp. The total cost for their tour, the glamping tent, dinner, and breakfast was only 40 dinars per person. We met our host in the village at 4 p.m. and then he drove us about 20 minutes out into the reserve to join the tour in progress. We visited a number of sites in the next 3 hours, including seeing a few natural bridges, stunning lookouts, ancient petroglyphs, and even a fun session of sandboarding. After having tea and watching the sunset at a beautiful vista point, we headed to camp. It had a few dozen glamping-style tents of various sizes. Ours was a budget one with 2 beds, and the washrooms and showers were a few steps away. But they did have a few larger, more deluxe tents with their own private bathroom and terrace. We had a buffet dinner of food cooked using a traditional Bedouin cooking method. We sang a few songs and went to bed. The next morning, we had breakfast and the Jeep took us back to the village by 9 a.m. From there, we did the long drive, almost the full length of Jordan, from Wadi Rum up to Jerash. This ancient Roman city has remarkably well-preserved ruins. Colonnaded streets, a rather unique and beautiful oval forum, ruins of temples, a very well-preserved theater, and much more. After Jerash, we headed back to Amman for our final night. Jordan's capital city is a really interesting blend of ancient and modern. We stayed very close to the heart of the old city. A visit to the restored Roman theater and the bustling markets of downtown was a great way to finish off a perfect week in this beautiful and friendly nation. So here's a few of my recommendations and reflections on Jordan. Right now, I'm recording this in Egypt, and being here is a stark reminder of how much easier travel in Jordan is. In our 8 days in Jordan, although I'm sure we paid a few tourist prices, we were never once overcharged, shortchanged, given a hard sell, or scammed. This is something that happened multiple times. Just in the first afternoon we were in Cairo. Get the Jordan Pass if you're staying at least 3 nights and visiting Petra. It will save you time and money. Rent a car if you're going to be traveling through much of the country. They're relatively cheap and gas is affordable. We got the cheapest car available from Sixt Rent-A-Car, and it cost under $150 for 8 days. Gas was a little less than 1 dinar per liter, and Google Maps worked great for all of our navigation. If you go to the Dead Sea, don't expect it to be just one long stretch of beach. I'd suggest accessing a beach by either staying in a hotel or buying a day pass at a hotel, where you have the access to showers and changing facilities. There are public beaches at the Dead Sea, but they are not well maintained. Although the cities in Jordan are modern and multilingual and have good infrastructure, rural Jordan is still quite a traditional place, with more limited speaking of languages other than Arabic. Outside of Western hotel chains, alcohol is not widely available at most restaurants and stores, although it can be purchased at licensed stores in larger cities and towns. Although not a bare-bones budget destination, Jordan offers a really good value for your money. Not surprisingly, restaurants around Petra were the most expensive of any of the places we visited, with larger meals around 8 to 13 Jordanian dinars. But in most places we went, including Amman, you could get a sandwich for 2 to 3 dinars and a very good meal for around 6 to 8 dinars. Buying water and snacks in a market will also save you significantly instead of buying them from vendors in the sites that you visit. Except for camping in Wadi Rum, we stayed in mid-range independent hotels and guest houses that we reserved on booking.com and paid between 26 to 62 dinars per night. I love my time in Jordan. It's a friendly and welcoming nation that has so much historical and natural beauty to offer. It's relatively easy, low hassle, an amazing place to visit. Thank you for tuning in. A like and subscribe is sincerely appreciated. Stay tuned for more travel content coming soon.